Presidential Election Petition Court strikes out petition by Action Alliance challenging election of Bola Ahmed Tinubu.
Them through on budgeting. We have something to put them through on oversight. We have retreat for leadership.
National Assembly commences capacity building workshop for 10th Assembly Senators and House members elect.
Abbas Tajudeen Kaduna for Deputy Speaker Southeast, Honorable Ben Kalu Adi.
APC National Working Committee endorses Godswill Akpabio for Senate presidency.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we'll continue our conversation on stabilizing the Naira.
Well, Nigeria has been struggling to stabilize the Naira and the pressure from dwindling forex inflows.
Indeed, Kiran, and despite several attempts by the central bank to stabilize the value of the local currency, including injecting about $15 billion into the economy, boosting diaspora remittances, and the ban of sale of forex to bureau de change operators, among other measures, it would appear that not much has been achieved as the Naira continues to depreciate in value against major currencies.
Now, the incoming administration is expected to take the reins of leadership in the next 20 days, and on Monday, experienced economists and financial experts were on Good Morning Nigeria to appraise and interrogate issues around stabilizing the Naira after May 29.
Well, the guests believe that the pressure on forex is as a result of high demand in relation to the supply of forex. Now, the guests also pointed out that as at March-April this year, external reserves stood at about $35 billion US. And this, they say, undermines the ability of the central bank to stabilize the currency to get a much higher value against the US dollar.
Now, they also advocated unification of multiple forex windows as part of deliberate policies required to stabilize the Naira. They explained that with the sources of foreign exchange dwindling and the limited non-oil export, the incoming government must address the imbalance between demand and supply of forex to mitigate further depreciation of the Naira.
Now, one of the guests, who's a regular Good Morning Nigeria, Shuaibu Idris, said the two things usually determine the exchange rate. One, the economic fundamentals, and then the other, the financial fundamentals. Although we have varying arguments on the variables, the other guests agree that pursuing the recovery of the Naira and pruning down thousands of bureau de change operators to only the licensed big players could be a step in the right direction.
Today, we continue our conversation on after May 29 stabilizing of the Naira with some other guests in addition to the ones we had yesterday, exploring other areas of the issue at hand. I am Kirian Umayo. Thank you for joining us on the program today.
And I'm Kingsley Osadolo. I also join my colleague Kirian to welcome you. So, Good Morning Nigeria. We are live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. And we are here in Abuja, the nation's capital, where we also have our headquarters studios. In the course of the program, municipal review, business and sports will follow in the complementary segments. For now, the highlights of the morning news will be given by Nolene Abel Amen. Morning, Nolene.
Good morning, Kingsley and Kirian. Here is the morning news. The National Council on Privatization, chaired by Vice President Yemi Osinbajo, has delisted Transcorp Power PLC from the routine evaluation and monitoring of the Bureau of Public Enterprise. The signing of the certificate of discharge took place at the Council's meeting on Monday.
Having exceeded the minimum performance target and having fulfilled all the agreed obligations, the National Council on Privatization at its meeting of the 4th of April 2023 considered and approved the recommendations of the Bureau and its request that the company, Power PLC, be approved for delisting from routine monitoring.
The Presidential Election Petition Court has struck out the petition filed by Action Alliance challenging the election of Bola Tinubu of the All Progressives Congress. This followed the motion for withdrawal filed by the parties. The National Working Committee of the All Progressives Congress has endorsed former Governor of Akwa Ibom State, Godswill Akpabio, and Senator Jibril Barrow for the position of President and Deputy Senate President of the 10th National Assembly, expected to be inaugurated in June 2023.
Tajudeen Kaduna for Deputy Speaker Southeast, Honorable Ben Carlo Abia. The NWC called for further and better consultation with necessary stakeholders in order to assure the support of the aspirants to the National Assembly leadership positions and members of the party nationwide.
Meanwhile, a week-long capacity-building workshop for 10th Assembly Senators and members-elect has commenced. It is meant to expose them to legislative practices and procedures as the inauguration of the 10th Assembly draws near. Some of the topics being treated are constitutional mandate, structure and operations, powers of the Nigerian legislature, and parliamentary immunities, among others.
We have retreats for leadership of each committees.
This is the best induction for somebody that is coming into a terrain that he has not been there before, for him to acclimatize himself and be able to catch up with those that are there already.
In other news, Speaker House of Representatives Femi Bajabiamila says more efforts should be made by the Nigerian Communications Commission to ensure telecommunication services permeate every part of Nigeria. This was at the commencement of investigation on non-availability of telecom services nationwide by House Ad Hoc Committee.
Have a right to telecommunications network, but that consideration should be extended to the rural dwellers.
The representative is committed to getting to the root of all bottlenecks or hindrances which may have made it impossible for us to attain desired target up till now.
Elsewhere, the First Lady of the Republic of Burundi, Angeline Ndayishimiye, has emerged the newly elected President of the Africa First Ladies Peace Mission. Equally, the outgoing President of the mission and the First Lady of Nigeria, Aisha Buhari, has been appointed as a chairperson of the Board of Trustees of the Peace Mission. This was contained in a communique of the closed-door meeting of the spouses of the African leaders presented during the 10th General Assembly.
The Peace Mission and setting it on a pathway to ensure its sustainability as a mechanism for promoting peace, mediation, and conflict resolution on the continent.
That's the news for now. Good morning, Nigeria continues with Kieran and Kingsley after the commercial break. Don't go away. I am Nalene Ebel-Ame. Good morning.
Having made incursions into Africa's largest market, and recently the largest in Asia, which is the Chinese market, the Nigerian Export Promotion Council has emphasized that sustaining the trajectory is a task that requires input of major stakeholders. The export house and Nigeria, through export trade, has widened its revenue base and earned foreign exchange, which has helped to bridge trade deficits.
To negotiate better terms of trade for Nigeria. We are in ECOWAS, we are doing the same thing in CFTA. We're doing all sorts of conversations on the bilateral level and engaging in the multilaterals.
In another development, the hike in cargo handling charges has splitted clearing agents. Activities at the handling companies have been granted since 25th of April as clearing agents under the aegis of Association of Nigeria Licensed Custom Agents and National Association of Government-Approved Freight Forwarders kicked against the 100% increment and have shut down their operations. They said the new charges would further impose hardship on Nigerians. The agitation made the aviation handling companies to reduce the increment from 100% to 75%, which is still being negotiated by the clearing agents. Now let's take a look at Monday tradings on the floor of the exchange. With business news, Alika Opanachi, Arua.
Many thanks, Alika, for the business package. Newspaper review comes up next.
We welcome Chukwudi Okolie-Waja to Newspaper Review segment. Chukwudi, it's good again to have you with us.
Good morning, Kirian.
As always, yes.
Good morning, Kensley.
Chukwudi, good to see you. That's right. Let's begin by taking a look at the front page of the Punch newspaper. Virtually all the stories here have been on since the stories broke yesterday. National Assembly, APC picks Akpabio and Abbas. High duty. Vehicle impulse crashed by 128%. Obi's visit not about reconciliation. That's according to Professor Shoyinka. And this story says tribunal, that's the kicker, Tinubu, Atiku, Obi's legal battle commences. With two riders, PDP and APM's petitions pre-hearings hold today, LP Obi's case Wednesday. Tribunal warns lawyers, says those who deserve justice will get it. Oshibajo presents discharge certificate to Transcorp Power. 7 children die in Zamfara boat accident, others missing. Bandits kidnap 40 Kaduna worshippers, 9 emirs' children. And federal government plans rescue of Nigerian domestic workers in Iraq. Kirian.
All right, the Nation newspaper is where we go next. And above the name flag of the newspaper for this morning, I don't know obedience, says Shoyinka. Obi visits Nobel laureate. The full story is on page 6. 40 worshippers abducted during church service. 15 victims escape. It's on page 25. 134 kidnapped victims from FCT councils rescued in Kogi is on page 25. And 400,000 youths participate annually in NYSC program. That's on page 2. Presidential Tribunal strikes out AA suit. That's the action part here. Pre-hearing continues. Tinubu, let's allow judicial process run its course. Page 6 is where you get the story on the Nation newspaper. Now, Sudan, 3-week-old among 5th batch of 132 returnees. That's a 3-week-old child, among the 5th batch of 132 returnees. It's on page 2. APC picks Akpabio, Abbas as Senate President and Speaker. Barrow Kalu nominated as Deputy Senate President. Deputy Speaker, 72 non-serving senators back party's choice. Umahi, Southeast to get compensation. Oji Kalu writes NWC. Tight security in Osun, that's at the bottom of the paper. Tight security in Osun ahead Supreme Court verdict. It's on page 2. Betara declares for speaker. It's also on page 26. So all these papers this morning, Kingsley, are carrying political stories.
That's right.
Chukudi, how do you dissect some of the stories that we have, and even more that you could bring forward?
Let us recognize that legal brickbats have started in earnest, concerning the presidential election petitions that we are contending with. Here we're saying that the final commencement of a legal tussle between the presidential candidates, one that won, who should correctly be called president-elect, and that's what it's called, and those who say the victory has a few questionable things. Yeah, the tussle has started. As much as we want good elections, and I'm speaking on a very positive note, as much as we want good elections and subsequent smooth transition to the next government, it is not totally undesirable for these election tussles to happen. For me, if properly handled, and I don't see why those icons in jurisprudence will not do just that. Yes, if well handled, the election result tussles do indeed help to strengthen the foundations of democracy, if nothing else. If nothing else, the next version of the Electoral Act gets good opportunity, for loopholes may be exposed during those legal tussles to be properly plugged, so that the next round of voting even becomes better than the last. The point I'm making here is that there is something good, after all, in these election petitions being heard and adjudicated and upon. And let's quickly mention too that the Supreme Court will today at 2 p.m. deliver judgment in the case brought against incumbent Osun State Governor Ademola Adeleke by former Governor Adegboyega Oyetola. It's the season of election cases, one would want to say here. We wish the men in those unique wigs wisdom and professional astuteness to enable them promote the tenets of the scale of justice. The justice. I like the image of is it a woman or a man? Eyes blindfolded.
It's a woman.
There's a sword, and it doesn't matter who you are, justice is delivered. So that's exactly what we're praying for, concerning this.
What I actually, like about the issue is the fact that it's speedy. I mean, it's gotten to Supreme Court in a short period of time,
it's speedy,
which is good. Which is good. Because they say justice delayed is justice denied, and this one was so quick and it's good. I hope it will also be carried.
I completely
cascaded down.
When I actually saw it, I said, "Oh, this fast?" So I'm totally in agreement with your observation.
For the first time, I'm
Kingsley, this is your forte. What are you saying about him?
That's what it's a pass mark for them, right? So it's okay.
So it's okay. Can you weigh in on these legal cases that have started in earnest?
The cases have started.
And one has been struck out.
You want me to sit in judgment over the
we have to label him Mr. Catch Me If You Can. Get close, I don't know. Anyhow. Okay. Let's look at this story by CBN on the CBN authorities, asking foreign banks to give loans in dollar. I think the Apex Bank is obviously trying to shore up the foreign exchange liquidity, and in the process stop this syndrome of drums of the Naira chasing a few baskets of the dollar. Yes, the local currency is not doing so well against the greenback, as my friend who presents business somewhere would call the dollar. But at the end of the day, let us remember that to make our currency really have weight, what we need is to become an exporting country, so that our balance of trade becomes one that is favorable, which of course rubs off on the weight of the currency. It's very important.
That. You just made a point, you know. But if we have to dissect it further, you know, it's not a tea party. You know, when you want to balance trade with the international community, when you're not a producing nation.
That's the point.
And most times when I say this, people could think maybe I have some kind of obsession, you know, when it comes to science, technology, and innovation. What I've just said, it cannot happen unless you begin to do groundwork to start operating homegrown technology. Until you do that, then this issue of manufacturing
homegrown technology.
The homegrown technology means that is either you reverse engineer or you originate an invention, right, that will help humanity in terms of things we use.
The homegrown aspect, scientific methods are universal.
Yes.
Very soon, you're going to tell me there's a Nigerian way of balancing the equation.
Not necessarily, because science is ubiquitous. Whatever result you have here, you have it elsewhere across the globe. But what I'm saying is the translation of science into practical reality that people can do in their own way to domesticate it. China did that in the 70s. China up. India did the same thing. These people now are producing planes, are producing helicopters, are producing warships, and what have you. Right, and we were at par with them in the 70s. That is the the annoying part of it.
So how come they were
exactly because they are focused on growing their economy and not importing. That's what they did deliberately. And today, you know where they are. And things like that. That's my worry about the whole thing when you talk about being exporting. What are you going to export? Are you going to export water?
I think that perhaps a more serious issue for us to consider as a country is not to continue to flagellate ourselves as though we were outsiders in the realm of science and innovation. Nigeria has scores of research institutes in diverse fields, agriculture, in pharmaceuticals and all that. One of the issues that has come up in recent years is that you have a number of research findings, and these research findings are there on the shelves, and there are no off-takers for these research findings to translate them into use in the domestic environment. And so, for instance, when you look at some of the basic industrial inputs that we continue to import, that also continue to pose a severe strain on our foreign reserves. These are additives, industrial inputs that are readily available in our environment. The thing is, how do we translate? And I think that is one missing link in our research, in our science research and innovation ideas. It is not the business of a scientist or an innovator to go on the marketing. So how do we then translate that? Go to Agricultural Research Council of Nigeria. We have all kinds of things. The last one that was popularized was the cowpea. After that, what next? And more importantly, we're not focused on some of these multinational elements. The multinational elements that continue to get their productive inputs from outside of the country, taking out lots of folks when these items are also readily available here at home. So, but then the other level of it would be for us to get into heavy duty machinery production. We're not there yet. That will require a steel base. Unfortunately, I mean, we haven't made a scratch in that respect. So these are the things that we have not focused on. We just keep talking. When you look at the breakdown of forex outgoings in terms of expenses, these are the items that just eat our money away, and then we're all crumbling.
Going beyond tomato and asking why the puree is not something we readily, shown our shelves in this country. A friend of mine who is simply obsessed with polymer possibilities told me, Chukwudi, do you know that the inside of a car is something that Nigeria can become one of the best producers of? What am I talking about? The plastic component of the car. Because it is all got from what? Crude, isn't it?
I know what I just said.
So, what is happening?
That was how Innocent started. He acquired a plastic company in Enugu then and started producing those plastic components of motorcycles. Now he's an individual. Now, if the Ministry of Science and Tech is focusing on that and there's a budget for it, I would say, look, Nigeria, let us professionalize in producing car interior.
Even if that's the only thing we do.
Exactly. And we'll grow from there. The science of today is the technology of tomorrow. And if you do not begin to practice it, you may never get there. Things we can produce that are many. Honestly, there are plenty, more than 150 products that I have itemized that can be produced in this country, including television, including fridge, including transformers, electric transformers. They are just looking for plant. Put the plant and the brains are there to put it into place.
The Emerson Plastics Factory, I visited the place some years ago. I don't know whether it's still operational.
It's still operational.
Fantastic, because that's where some of the bumpers and spare and parts of the cars, they are produced there and then of course sent to the factory at Nnewi for addition. Tyrian, instead of saying it's the business of science and tech, I would rather it is the business of MITI, Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment.
In collaboration with
of course,
the business of investors as well.
Industry, investment and trade.
In synergy.
Get all of these things. Okay, where do we establish the next factory for plastic production? We have plastics all over the place. Eleganza in Lagos, for instance, all these coolers and all these things that water.
But that's too small scale.
That's what I'm saying. But to say now, to get it for industrial uses, for automobile uses, to get the appropriate modes. And then, have you observed something? This thing has, I thought about it some time ago. When you look at a number of our household appliances, this could be an idea for those who are investors. When you look at a number of our household appliances, blenders in particular, and so on and so forth, the parts are basically of plastics. And those parts are fragile.
Yes.
Now, this is the trick. If that part or one of the plastic parts is broken, you are unlikely to find anywhere else in this market where you can buy it. You will be lucky if you went around scrap market and somebody gave you the equipment. Couldn't you therefore say, look, you have a product that is coming to the country, and then people can you don't have a manufacturer of the readily replaceable parts.
Reverse engineer it.
Precisely, it's not a big deal. So that if the part of that blender gets broken, you go to the shop and then get a replacement. Rather than say the blender part is broken, then discard, go and get a new one. You're just wasting money. There are many opportunities. Look at the other one. I've raised it on Good Morning Nigeria a number of times. Look, how many vehicles do we have in Nigeria? Half of the vehicles we have in Nigeria will be found in the Lagos and Ogun area. Half. Let us assume each of those vehicles are the four-wheelers. That's to say, you use 4 tires with a spare. How many tires do we produce in Nigeria?
About tires.
Basic ingredients for tire production is available here. Rubber, and then this carbon black, which is from one of the derivatives of crude oil. So people are just and then you every time we say we have seized hundreds of thousands of used tires that have been imported gleefully. They make a bonfire, they're polluting the environment.
In fact, instead of reversing the tires to make new tires, melt them, and reverse engineer it and not new tires from them.
The curious thing is that it's not as if we never started. My elderly friend, Reverend Fred Odutola, once I was in his office and he told me that he was a relative of Odutola, the man behind Odutola tires. What happened midstream? This should have been encouraged.
Exactly. And it should have been encouraged. And then you don't mutually close down. The other story before we don't have time. We need to point this out because in a sense it is related to what we are discussing. Here on the front page of the Punch, at the foot of the page, it says federal government plans rescue of Nigerian domestic workers in Iraq. So you just ask yourself, how did you find yourself in Iraq? Because you are looking for forex
I'm sorry, for the people who are in Iraq, I will not blame them because in a country where there is a war situation, there's also a business situation there. So exactly. What about food? What about supply of food?
So these are domestic workers. Why are you not in Sudan?
Okay. Why are you not in Sudan? To round it off, you know, one of my friends that lives in America told me this, that in America, for instance, there's no household, particularly the issue of household, utensils and a lot of things that we use at homes, that there's no home in America that does not use one of them made in China. If you go to your house, anything that you blender you talk about is made in China. Turn it back, you see it made in China. How did China get there? How did they get there? It depends on policy, implementation, and strategy.
You also had American investors who were pumping money into China, setting up factories because labor costs were cheaper.
Exactly.
And then you have also seen now Vietnam, after the Viet Cong defeated the Americans on the 30th of April 1975, the Americans have started investing in Vietnam. And Vietnamese goods and services are becoming more commonly available in the U.S. What we call, sometimes we say Chinese products will run them down as though they were inferior. The country will specify the quality of goods that you would need to have.
The goods step it down. Yeah, step it down. On that note, we conclude the newspaper review. We will do this again tomorrow when we return with the first package of the program.
And by tomorrow, you will go to Sudan. Since there are opportunities in Sudan.
The program is currently powered by Chukwudi Okole Obaja. We'll see him again tomorrow. We are watching Good Morning Nigeria on NTA Network Service. We'll take a short break. All right, the program is Good Morning Nigeria on NTA Network Service. We're glad to know that you are there with us for this conversation. Of course, we commenced this conversation yesterday, and that's on stabilizing the Naira after May 29. And as a prompt to the second conversation on same topic, we have excerpts from the first part of the program compiled by our correspondent, Oyemi Ajayi.
Yes, the central bank pump money into the economy, but to meet development purposes, to meet the needs of development, and to also help take the economy out of the two recessions that the country had in the past 6 or 7 years. So it was not printing or pushing money into circulation for the sake of doing so. Yes, such monies in one way or the other has some impact on the exchange rate, but they were largely targeted towards the exigencies of development. And that's why the bank had implemented numerous development finance interventions.
Why do we have challenge in the money that has been pumped by the central bank? It's because those monies were not targeted as much as they should be. The juries are out on the Anko Borrower scheme. Only about 30-35% of the Anko Borrower scheme loans are performing. The rest is not performing. So the country will lose about 70% of that quantum of money that was pumped. And most of it was extended to political farmers. I mean, let's call a spade for once. We had Ways and Means account that the National Assembly just recently approved for the government of the Federation to eventually issue notes. Where was this Ways and Means account? What happens to it? From Obasanjo time till Goodluck Jonathan's time, there was never a time when we had Ways and Means account. Why do we have it now?
However, it must be said that no matter how bad this economic management of this government has been, they have also tried to reposition. Let's be fair to them. It's easy to just come and castigate and just say, oh, they've done everything bad. No, they haven't done everything bad. In fact, some of the things they've done has positioned the next government for success. And so we must stay positive, and I believe that we can surmount it.
I'm not averse to reform, but our annoyance is that our livelihood has been withdrawn. Many Nigerians have depended on this business, and now we have gone extinct. The activities, even the so-called farmers look for $2 million, even $1,000 you are looking for in the bank to travel, you cannot see it. Most of the foreign exchange transactions are not even taking place formally, they are taking place informally. We have the creations of even international market. We don't even know where is their office. Are they in Kenya, or they are in Ghana, or they are in Nigeria? Which control our exchange rate on daily basis.
All right, now those were excerpts from the first part of our discussion yesterday on stabilizing the Naira. All four guests, of course, are our regulars on Good Morning Nigeria. And today we have two of those guests from yesterday. They're still here with us for the conversation in the Abuja studios, and two other fresh guests are also joining us, and they in turn are frequent guests on Good Morning Nigeria. Once again, let me welcome Shuaibu Idris, Managing Director of Timeline Consults, of course a former banker, investment advisor and a trainer. Shuaibu Idris, glad to have you this morning.
Good morning, and thank you once again for having me. It's a pleasure.
Here, the new face for today is Professor Uche Waleke, Professor of Finance and Capital Market, Nasarawa State University, and former Commissioner of Finance in Imo State. Professor Waleke, we're glad to have you.
Thank you, Kentley. Good morning, Nigeria.
All right, and here in the studio is Dr. Tope Fasua, founder, CEO, Global Analytics Consulting Limited. You're welcome, Dr. We were here with you. We reached from Lagos yesterday.
Oh, yes.
And we are here with us today.
Thank you.
We're glad to see
Thanks
you.
for inviting me.
And from our Kaduna studio is Professor Isharango, Professor of Finance and Entrepreneurship, Kaduna State University. It's good to have you, Prof, from our Kaduna Center.
Good morning, Kirian and Kingsley. It's my pleasure. I'm happy to be here. Good morning, Nigerians.
All right, gentlemen, yesterday Tope Fasua and Shuaibu Idris had the opportunity of laying the foundation for their arguments, and it's only fair that with Professor Uche Waleke and Professor Isha Wango, both again regulars on Good Morning Nigeria, joining us this morning, they also get the opportunity of laying their foundation. Incidentally, just to remind our viewers that over the course of time, especially when the country ran into the first recession in 2016 and then the subsequent recession, all the guests that we have this morning and indeed yesterday were frequent on Good Morning Nigeria in proffering solutions, workable solutions to getting the country out of economic recession and trying to, of course, stabilize the economy with their prognosis thereafter. So today, let's begin with our studios here, Professor Uche Waleke. How do we stabilize the Naira? I mean, the story of the Naira is clear, but despite measures and the efforts, we still see the Naira the way it is, whether through the official window or the parallel market. We see the value, and the net effect for the ordinary man is at the end of the day, items, goods and services are priced versus the dollar. And that has tended to increase the cost of living, and some would say hardship and misery. What's happening?
Yeah, once again, thank you, Kensley. And I like the way you put the question, how do we stabilize the Naira? Not necessarily the concern about the exchange rate, being, too high. Because stability is what is key. If the Naira is not stable, of course, it will affect even investment flows. FDIs can come in when you have volatility in the exchange rate. Let me also start this way. It bears repeating that exchange rate is simply the rate at which you exchange your currency with that of another country's currency. And then why do you need another country's currency? It's simply because you want to make purchases in that currency. If that can be cut off, or if much of that can be cut off, then it shouldn't be an issue. You see, people often talk about the 80s and the 90s, particularly the 80s when the exchange rate was simply at par. 1 naira to the dollar. The same with the 90s, when at least the exchange rate was not more than 10 naira to the dollar. I think it was even in 1986, following SAP, that in August 1986, that in one single day, the naira was devalued from $1 to 4 naira to $1 to 10 naira. So when you now look at that period, you realize that in 1998, from available records, in 1998, I give an example. The number of students studying abroad in 1998, Nigerian students studying abroad, we had just 16,000, according to the United Nations Institute for Statistics. 20 years later, by 2018, the number of students abroad, including neighboring African countries, jumped to 98,000. So between 2010 and 2020, the country had spent over $30 billion on foreign education alone. This is according to publicly available data, from the central bank. Now, in the area of health, it is the same story. That we spend over that same period, we spent close to $11 billion. So for education and health, what we call invisibles here, okay, over a 10-year period, we spent more than $40 billion. That's for invisibles. If you talk about imports, again, the figures also try to explain why we are where we are today. Imports, in 1980, again, central bank data says import in 1980 was just $16 billion. By 2013, it had risen to $67 billion total imports, and then, of course, dropped to about $57 billion now, partly on account of some of the measures again introduced, by the CBN, particularly on the demand side. Okay, so when you have that kind of situation, the case I mentioned in 1980, for example, when imports were 16 billion, exports that year, okay, amounted to $25 billion. So you had more exports than imports. So over a long period of time, the country witnessed trade surpluses. So you should expect that, of course, the naira, would be stronger. So we can go on and on, okay, on this matter. So the point I'm making is that if we can cut off much of that demand for foreign currency, of course, the naira would appreciate. So that speaks to productive capacities. And that speaks to what we also do here internally, because all these things are linked. We can't just extricate exchange rate and say we want to talk about exchange rate alone. Exchange rate is linked to inflation. Exchange rate is linked to interest rate. As long as you have high inflation within your domestic economy, as long as you have high interest rate within your domestic economy, you should expect that exchange rate will also be high. Okay, even what I'm saying has theoretical foundation. The law of one price, for example, says that a commodity that is the same, in two countries should sell at the same price if you remove issues like, inflation. So what that means is that the exchange rate between a currency and that of another currency, between a country and that of another country, is a function of inflation. So we need to deal with inflation rates in Nigeria to be able to expect that exchange rate will come down. We also need to deal with the issues around them, interest rate. So why I started by saying that the rate is not really the issue, but what we do here domestically, our productive capacities, is the analogy I want to give, for example I want to cite, is that of South Korea. South Korea today, we know, is a producer nation, as exporter nation. The cars we even drive here, from South Korea. That reminds me, Kinsley, you'll agree with me that in the 80s, 75% of the cars driven in Nigeria were produced here, either by Volkswagen in Lagos or by Peugeot in Kaduna, assembled here. Okay, today the story is the same. We import cars.
And Namco, remember Mercedes?
Yes, I'm saying right now, at least 98% of cars are imported. Okay, I was talking about South Korea. The exchange rate between the dollar and South Korea, the currency of South Korea is called the won. That exchange rate is 1,320, about 23, as of yesterday. But what does that say about the South Korean economy? When you look at the domestic indicators, if you look at the inflation rate in South Korea, it is 3.2%. If you look at interest rate in South Korea, the policy rate in South Korea is 3.5%. So those things are the things that matter. I'm saying for us in Nigeria, the things that matter are inflation, interest rates, okay, jobs. By the time we deal with those things, which, of course, much of it lies in the fiscal space, okay, then we can begin to talk about how to address exchange rates. But let me also say before I end my first opening statement, what we need to do has already been, put together in the document we called the National Development Plan. Okay, if you go to that document, chapter 3 of that document, talks about the way forward with respect to monetary sector. Okay, so it is for us to go and implement that. One of which is the harmonization of the multiple exchange rates. Okay. Diversification of the export base.
Prof, yes, we will get to a point where we begin to look at solutions, where we will begin to profile solutions as we may progress in the conversation. But right now, let's get the take of other experts here with us, with a special interest on Professor Yishao Ango, Professor of Finance and Entrepreneurship at the University of Kaduna, or Kaduna State University rather. All right, see, from what you have, the scenario you have painted, it does appear that we have a basket of issues when it comes to monetary and fiscal policies of this country. Because Nigeria has financial experts who are in the saddle, manning all the agencies that have to do with the management of the nation's economy, and yet we're still grappling with certain things, especially production, and now we're talking about forex. Professor Ango, where do you come in here? Injecting of $15.3 billion into the economy, boosting diaspora remittances, and the ban on sale of the bureau to the bureau de change operators appear not to have worked, going by what is on ground at the moment. Now, whatever perspective you may want to look at it, let's have your take on the current situation of the Naira and, of course, generally of the economy.
I was opportune to watch yesterday's discussion, and from it one can see clearly where we have been and where we are today. Naira had suffered significantly, especially in the last 4 years or 3 years, with the devaluation that has happened. Now, but like Prof said just now, what matters sincerely, significantly, is the issue of stability, rather than how much or what price we are exchanging our currency with another currency. But I want us to take note of a number of things that have happened. First of all, exchange rate regimes are different, in different countries. In some countries, they are able to have fixed rates. They are able to hedge or to fix their country's currency and merge it or fix it or side by side with another. Like you have, say, for example, in the Middle East, in Saudi Arabia or United Arab Emirates, where they have a certain exchange rate between them, their currencies, and United States dollar, for example. And then we have floating exchange rates in some countries, as we have here in this country, and that is another regime altogether. Now, basically, like has been discussed yesterday, the major issues sometimes that support the currency are a number of issues. Among them, certainly the foreign reserves that a country has. That is what gives them the power to be able to support their currency vis-a-vis other currencies. Now, but what we have seen in the last few years, especially in the regime of the current central bank governor, is that unfortunately we have not been able to defend the Naira. Now, of course, there are many circumstances that have taken place, and some of them are not necessarily within the control of the governor or of the central bank. But then some of these issues have to be taken in context. Now, specifically, I remember in 2018, on a visit to Indonesia, the central bank governor particularly made statement that their effort or their whatever they will do will be to ensure that they protect the Naira, they defend the Naira. That's what they are going to do rather than maintaining a huge foreign reserve. So it's a chicken and egg situation. You know, if you don't maintain a high external reserve, there are people who are watching and they are speculating sometimes. And a lot of the problem we have had, especially as regards exchange rate, is sincerely because of speculative activities rather than real economic realities that force these currencies or our own currency to devalue. A lot of it was speculation, and what I have seen, especially from the central bank management of this, is that sincerely they have dabbled, they have tried different things, but they don't seem sincerely to have gotten a hold of the real issues. They have tried this and they have tried that. From what was said yesterday, for example, there were, according to the leader of the Bureau de Changes, there are over 6,000 of them in the country. So many licenses were issued. At some points, selling of foreign currency to Bureau de Changes will stop, and at some points it will continue. And like has been stressed yesterday by one of the speakers yesterday, and who is here today. Now, another issue which we have also discussed on this program many times before is that quite a number of times when we are talking of these exchange rates, what comes to mind is always the parallel market rate rather than the other windows that are available there. So unfortunately, the fact that we have this mix of markets is not helping matters. And like has been stated correctly also, it's not possible to merge all the markets at once. Unfortunately, that was more or less what was proposed in a way by my friend who is also participating today. Now, what I'm trying to say is that the management of our foreign market or exchange has not been very up and doing. It's not very, it was not well done, in my opinion. But we have to also take in context, or to look at it in context of what happened in the economy globally and in Nigeria itself. You know, if you remember, by 2015, when this government came into power, the foreign reserve was just 28, as at May, was just 28 point something billion. If you remember, the foreign reserve at the time of Eradua, it was 40 something billion. And then if you remember also, at that point, before 2015, 2014, 2013, the currency, the inflow that we get of foreign exchange, which largely comes from petroleum, petroleum was selling at such a huge, up to 140, 130, 120 per dollar. Now, but this government took over at 28 point something billion as foreign reserve. Now, we are today at 30 something billion. So much has happened. It has gone to 40 something, come down, and all that and all that. Now, look at that. And then remember also, during this period, we have had COVID. Now, all of these have impact on the economy. And anything that has impact on the economy certainly will have impact on the foreign exchange. So, yes, so much has happened, and I believe so much needs to be done. And like my colleagues have said, from all indication, this government that is coming in is coming at a lucky time in a way, because so many things have been put in place, and I think sincerely they may not have as much challenges, God willing, going into their own time. Because especially, at least, if anything, the fact that we are going to reduce substantially import of petroleum if this Dangote refinery comes in, that will reduce pressure on the exchange, and that will reduce pressure also hopefully on the issue of subsidy and all those issues for economic fundamentals that have impacted, on the price and then the exchange rates and the economy as a whole.
Thank you very much, Professor Ushal Ango, for your opening comment. Let's return to the studios. I'd like, gentlemen, for us to weigh in on some of the constitutive factors identified by Professor Uche Uwaleke against the backdrop of conversations that we have also had on Good Morning Nigeria. And Dr. Fasho, I'm coming first to you. Uche Waloke says that inflation and interest rates are factors in the value of the exchange rate of a domestic currency. Why is it that over time the MPC of the central bank, that's the Monetary Policy Committee of the central bank, has been grappling with the exchange rate? Has been grappling with the interest rate. They say that, they keep fixing the interest rate. At some point, people are wondering why it is 13.5. Another point side is 14%. And the argument that comes out of the meeting in terms of the briefing is that, they are using that to hedge against inflation, to manage inflation. For those who are lay persons, you hear about the interest rates in other economies, single digit, actually very low single digit. If you hear anything like 5%, everybody's concerned. Why is it that we keep raising ours? And we know, for instance, that assuming that the central bank MPC fixes the interest rate at 15%, for you to go borrow from a commercial bank, you'll be looking at 20-something, 30-something%. So this is that. It's just something that the MPC itself has been missing. Assuming you agree with the thesis by Professor Uche Waloke that those rates, inflation and interest, are critical determinants of the value of a national currency.
Thank you very much, sir. And Professor Waloke has laid a very strong theoretical background for today's discussion, and as someone who has been steeped in that area, he has given us some very important things to talk about. So interest rates and inflation rates are critical to the determination of exchange rates themselves for critical reasons. If interest rates are very high in a jurisdiction, in an economy, of course, that means that that's a kind of inflationary. That itself drives inflation. Okay, and vice versa. Therefore, investors going into that economy need something extra, and so they will not be taking your currency at par. They'll be factoring that in the theoretical determination of interest rate. Exchange rate between two economies. The key factor is what he has mentioned: the interest rate levels, the inflation rate levels. However, it needs to be said that's not the only determinant. As Professor Ango has also mentioned, of course, other issues like the productivity of an economy, and in fact what we call economic complexity, meaning the knowledge quotient of goods and services produced by a country, is also a determinant. What are you selling? What's the value of what you're selling? We find that we put ourselves under a lot of pressure because in looking at the balance of trade, which Professor Waloke also spoke about, what we sell are agricultural products. I mentioned yesterday the profile of Nigeria's import and export. Our key import, technology. Every year maybe about 40 billion or something of that sort. In fact, that's the thing. At least 30 billion technology comes into this country. The next item will be the petroleum products that we import, which we are hoping that we're able to dovetail on that and cut it down by at least 80% if refineries come in. That will be some relief, but not the entire thing. For example, on technology, we have no choices than to import what we import. And in fact, these parts that I'm talking about are the visible trade aspect. Let's talk of the invisible, which Professor Waloke spoke about. The invisible trade are things like school fees, even if you like, things like subscriptions that we all pay, whether we like it or not. You want to be on Zoom, you have to pay a subscription. You want to trade in one thing or the other, you have to. There's also all sorts of, kind of technological trades going on around us. So, but on the visible side, technology is key in terms of our import. The next is our petroleum. Then you have things like pharmaceuticals, about $3 billion worth every year. We don't have a choice, from India, from Pakistan, and what have you. Then you have even things like I mentioned yesterday, milk. $900 million worth of milk. Fish and eggs. And so when the central bank comes and say, listen, let us restrict how much forex we are giving to some of these people. We don't want to finance everything. Even the other day, was it Norway that was complaining very bitterly about the non-support, not banning. Central bank cannot ban any
any importation. It's not within their decision. What they can only say is, look, we are not going to be giving you official forex. Go and sort yourself out. But we're the biggest importer of oporoko, what they call oporoko, stockfish. From Norway, was it? Was it Finland? Yes. And if our non-support of that has impacted that country. So that's on the import side. On the export side, however, the story is different, because our key and perhaps only main export still remains petroleum products. No. Unfortunately, we call it crude petroleum products. No. And of course, after that, there's a bit of refined products that we still export. If you look at the data, we still export some refined, officially, to maybe neighboring countries and so on. Maybe that's not a lot, maybe about $2 billion, but the major export is the crude. After this very crude and a bit of refined, maybe refined oil and so on, the next thing you find are things like sesame seed, what they call seed oil. And we don't do more than $350 million worth. Minding the fact that a lot of exports also go out of Nigeria that's not recorded for Nigeria, because of the logistics of bringing things from the north of Nigeria to export in Lagos, for example, and of course the many challenges, some of which were mentioned there yesterday, of exporting anything through Nigeria. Many things are exported through Niger, we belong to Nigeria. Many things are exported through Ghana, for example, our hibiscus, due for several reasons, including our own fault too. Non-compliance with standards, a lot of things get exported through Ghana out of this country. But officially what we're seeing is this. So from having almost 10 different products that are in the billion-dollar range, billion dollar range, okay, in import, we have only one product that is in the billion-dollar range on export. So it's a struggle. In spite of the fact that the government has tried to diversify, the sources of foreign exchange and our exports and what have you. So back to the issue of exchange rates, and I think I must quickly add that there's also a kind of historical and psychological aspect to the determination of interest rate, of exchange rates. It's not only the complexity and the size of the exports that a country puts out there. There's also a history involved. For example, between the UK and the US. The US economy is perhaps maybe almost 10 times bigger than the than the UK economy today. The population, 350 million to 60 million. The complexity, there's more innovation going on in the US than the UK. In fact, they also complain about the same jackpot problem between the UK into the US. A lot of their professors end up in the US. And their academics and their very brainy people. However, why is the pound stronger than the dollar? So we shouldn't rest on our oars and use only the theoretical underpinnings alone. We must know that we balance things. Professor Oleke talked about the South Korean won at 1,320 thereabout. Yesterday I was also looking. The yuan of the Chinese, the renminbi, is trading at 6.9. And the Americans are always looking at that renminbi. Every time they devalue, they say, why are you devaluing? They know the Chinese want to export to everywhere, especially the US. But you see, they're still managing at 6.9, 7, 7.1, 7.2. So it's something that must be tightly managed. Okay. So regarding the interest rate and the inflation rate, the last thing I wanted to say was that, look, our kind of economy, we must understand, I mentioned history just now, sir, but we must understand that we are at a certain stage in this economy. If we intend to pursue growth, and we do need growth now, because it's only through the growth of the economy that we can begin to solve the problem of unemployment, of poverty, and all of these indices that Nigeria is famous for in a wrong way. Okay, so but if you're going to drive growth, meaning that when you feel the buzz of the growth of the economy, when you're seeing cranes everywhere, when there's business going on everywhere, certainly there will be inflation. So I don't want us to panic about the fact that our inflation rate is where it is, that much. We can work it down. And also the last is the interest rate setup, which is the question by Mr. Kingsley. The interest rate regime as managed by the MPC. The MPC guys are professionals in their own regard. However, my fear is that sometimes they pander too much to the theoretical issues. The idea, as espoused in economic books, that if you raise interest rate, inflation will fall. What we have seen in recent times is that the more they raise the interest rate, the more the inflation is going up. Meaning that they must look at the multifaceted, multivariables that affect where interest rate goes apart from, the affair where inflation goes apart from interest rate. It can be done.
Dr. Fashua, we have to pause you here, because if you allow you to go, you could go on and on. Because we're beginning to have complexity in all of this. He has mentioned that we have professionals in the field, yet we are finding it difficult to, if you like, concoct a system, manageable system that can turn things around. Because this issue we have been on that over the years. We have all made very valid points. Professor Ango, talked about what happened during the COVID. And COVID, some crimes believe that COVID was an opportunity, to step up in terms of, growing the nation's economy. We're at a point we couldn't buy face masks at that time, and some nations who have face masks, decided to hold it, to say about being nationalistic and what have you. And when American economy sneezes, we keep saying this over time, the rest of the global economy will begin to develop cough. And that means that most nations do not have good backgrounding with their economy. The South Korea that Professor Oleko mentioned is a typical example. The exchange rate is very high on the part of Naira to their own currency. Yet, internally, the economy is booming, right? The economy is booming, and we can do it. It's not a magic. It is a professional implementation of reasonable strategies to ensure that the nation has good backgrounding with the economy, and will begin to affect the interest rate, affect inflation, and affect other things. So let me bring in again one of our guests, Shuaibu Idris, who is important. Of course, he's itching to say something. You have listened to others, right? And you were here yesterday. You are a proponent of unification of multiple forex windows as part of deliberate policy that could, turn things around for the nation's currency. Where do you come in from this time around?
Thank you very much, Kirian. Let me start on a lighter note. Kingsley, Kirian, and the gentleman that you did the newspaper review this morning, you gave us, a free consultancy services by saying one can pick polyethylene, trash and use them. That is a very free consultancy. I didn't even know that beyond lawyer, you are also a financial consultant. Yes.
Just 5%. 5% when you do get going with the business.
A number of things have been said, and I think let me also put a caveat here. I wasn't in any way proposing a unification between the parallel market and the official market. What we were proposing yesterday, and this has been consistent by economics, whether in the World Bank, IMF, ECA, that is Economic Commission of Africa, the Nigerian economies, financial derivatives, economic associate, all, even the members of the Economic Advisory Committee of the President, everybody has been talking about a merger of the two official or so-called different rates. Multiplicity of exchange rate breeds corruption. And let's call a spade a spade. I was never looking at, say, merge the parallel market rate with the I&E window or the official exchange rate. I think it needs to be very clear. And I'm not also so much of a pessimist. I am of the opinion that even the best system can be improved. So, yes, successive regime and even the current governor of Central Bank and the current administration, there are areas where they did well and excellent, but there are areas where it requires some level of improvement. And I think this clarification is absolutely necessary so that no one should go with a wrong impression that one is judgmental about one action or another. Fast forward the discussion. You alluded to the fact that the MPC, and indeed Dr. Faswa also alluded to the fact that MPC is grappling with where to station our interest rate. Is the Nigerian MPC alone in this quagmire? And the answer is no. Anybody who is a student of finance will agree with me that in the last 12 to 18 months, the United States Federal Reserve Bank has been grappling with interest rate. Almost every quarter there has been an increase. United Kingdom, as recent as January last year, interest rate in United Kingdom was around 2%, 2.3, 2.7. Today, as at the end of the first quarter of this year, interest rate in United Kingdom, the base rate is somewhere around 9%, a little below 9%. So is the fight between inflation and interest rate peculiar to Nigerian environment? The answer is capital no. So let's look at why is our situation a little different. Now, fundamentally, we have poverty so rampant in Nigeria. What determines interest rate? Savings. Are people able to save in Nigeria? If there are no funds in the system, what do you need to do to attract savings? You need to up the ante, you need to increase interest rate so that people may be able to come forward and save. But here in Nigeria, no matter how much you increase the interest rates, how we are poor, there is no money, and there is nowhere we can save. Now we need to look at other fundamentals that determines price stability. And my argument has been consistent in the last 24 months or even longer. The Central Bank of Nigeria is having challenges in maintaining price stability. Sometimes in some of the actions or inaction it takes, instead of helping the system, it overheats the system. And I give an analogy that you have a balloon, you blow so much air into it, what will that balloon eventually happen to it? It will burst. You are having the retention rate of funding that you get from the banks, you strangulate them of funds. You are having a situation where you are pumping money into the system through an opaque means. Yes, no two way about it. Absolutely nothing wrong in intervention. But how and what is the mechanism of the intervention? I'm making a gospel truth that some of the interventions leave much to be desired. Instead of helping the economy, they indeed were inadvertent. Now let's talk about the other side of the divide. Professor Uche Owaleki absolutely and aptly, captured the demand side of foreign exchange. What we need to be interrogating is the two sides. The supply side, how do we up the ante? How do we improve the supply side of the dollar? I disagree with Dr. Paswa that agricultural commodities are small quantities. If we are to insist that exporters of sesame seed, ginger, cocoa, rubber and what have you must set up industries locally, we will achieve minimum three things: improvement in value, and therefore the export earnings from those commodities will do what? Will head north. They will increase. We will improve job opportunities. We will improve taxation where we have problems. So that's on the supply side. On the demand side, like I did say, Uche Owaleki aptly looks at it. Where were we 25 years ago in terms of health, education, and other services that we render? And where are we today? Can't we fix our universities? Can't we fix our hospital system? That some of these things that we fly to UK or to US, can't we do the same? Can't we do it here in Nigeria in this day and age where via Zoom or Microsoft Teams or even WhatsApp, a professor can sit down in UK or US or Japan and direct things to be done locally? We can save, the demand. We can reduce the demand. It is indeed, gentlemen, as Nigerians and as passionate Nigerians, Let us tell ourselves the bitter truth. In the last 8 years of this administration, our dear father, elder brother, and indeed President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria has been the petroleum minister. He was petroleum minister when he was in uniform. Yet, for 8 years, we've not been able to fix our refineries. We've not been able to sell the damn refineries that have been draining our resources. Nor have we been able to start up a new refinery. And what do we say about this? I can mention areas where we need improvement, and I believe sincerely for us to stabilize the Naira. Fundamentally, 3/14 President Asuwaju, when eventually he sworn into power, needs to do. Number one, our debt profile is extremely high. He needs to quickly set up a team to begin to negotiate and renegotiate so that we can have an extended terms. We have 96% of our revenue being used to service debt. This is not sustainable. We have to take the unpalatable route of expanding the tax base. Let us be able to have more people brought into the tax dragnet so that revenues could be enhanced, and then we can then stabilize the economy. We might need to increase some taxes. VAT in quite a number of claims are as high as 15%, 20%. Ours is still somewhere around 7.5%. We may need to up that rate. We will also definitely need to talk the talk and walk the talk. This issue of diversification of the economy is long overdue. It's long overdue, and I repeat for the third time, it's long overdue. We can't sit down and be talking about exporting crude. Nigeria has been monolithic economy. For how long should we talk and talk and talk? And we, the elite, like we had before this conversation, we had our side talks, we lack consensus. And unless otherwise we have the consensus to say, what do we need to do in the health sector? What do we need to do in the education sector? What do we need to do in the manufacturing sector? And what do we need to do in our national and collective interest? We will have no future. Let me pause here.
Okay. Travel Idris, thank you very much for your intervention, and indeed the other gentlemen. Again, Kirian, many more issues and then of course these are our regulars on Good Morning Nigeria, always very passionate, very patriotic, nationalistic in their recommendations, as well as of course prior to that the analysis of our financial and economic situation. I want to use this as an entry point for my next question. Incidentally, Professor Uche Waloke talked about South Korea and the exchange rate. But what are the major exports of South Korea, Kirian? One of the leading revenue earners, well over $100 billion for South Korea, manufacture of integrated circuits, IC. Dr. Tope Fashua, you talked about our spend on technology imports. You bring in a computer, we have our own so-called smartphones. We have our television sets and so on and so forth. Each of them has an IC, what is called an integrated circuit. That is like the brain box of these items. And then they also use them in weapon system, which is why you see the close alliance, the relationship between the US and South Korea, apart from their issues with North Korea, to say, look, you manufacture these ICs, that's integrated circuits, to whom do you sell them? Sell them to us, sell them, because there is no one country that can have all the components that it needs for the manufacture of the high-tech equipment. So ICs, automobiles, cars, vehicles, as you said, we have them all over the place. Then refined petroleum products, one of the leading items from South Korea, we have them. Then, of course, the parts and spares for all of that, as well as office machine parts. If I say that, say, look, Dr. Fashua, we'll make a photocopy of this for you. Do we have a photocopier making a factory in Nigeria?
No.
And if the photocopier breaks down, where do we get the spares from? So, all right. Which leads us to the issue of economic diversification. This we will say will be the high-tech end of what I've just indicated in terms of South Korea, other than, for instance, refined petroleum products, which is well within our province. But for all the other items, what is it that we appear not to have gotten right in terms of our pursuit of economic diversification? We have non-oil exports. This is the percentage is now into added to our GDP. But when you keep looking at the opportunities, are we marginal players? And if we are marginal players, why is it that we don't get into the main arena? And who can we recruit to help us get into the main arena? In asking this last question, Professor Waloke, is it that the federal government is the one who is just talking about economic diversification, and state governments, subnational entities have no clue, have no interest whatsoever? I have never seen any report by a state government that boasts about its agricultural performance to say, oh, for sesame seed or the seed oils and so on and so forth, fish production, this is where we are, this is what we have done. Everybody's coming to Abuja to come and collect FAC. And we were doing so at some point as Commissioner for Finance in Imo. Yeah. Professor Waloke.
Yeah, thank you once again, Kingsley. I think the major challenge boils down to our productive capacities. The United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, UNCTAD, has what it calls 8 components of productive capacities. On the issue of subnationals' role, again, it also has to do with the way the country is structured. If you permit, I will return to these 2 later. But let me quickly say this, that to be fair, it's important to note that the exchange rate we have today would have been a lot worse, but for some of the measures, that we are put in place. If you look at on the demand side, what has happened over time, at least in recent time, is that the central bank has tried the currency swap option with China, even though the size was small. That's why, in my view, we didn't really feel the impact on the exchange rate. And it has also tried the issue of an administrative measure that restricted certain items, access to the official forex, the 42 items. All these were on the demand side. On the supply side, we've seen, in order to boost supply, central bank introduced the Naira for dollar policy, and again recently is pursuing the RT 200 forex raised to 200 billion, a program. Okay, and if you look at all of that, they were challenged one way or the other. In my view, what needs to be done going forward, we'll still have to deal with the issue of, I return to it, the issue of inflation. And part of why the hike in interest rates over time, has not resulted in a significant drop in inflation is because of the major drivers of inflation in Nigeria. The cost of inflation in Nigeria, which is more of supply side, which is more of cost push than demand pull. So you can only use hike in interest rates to address the demand pull side when you want to address the issue of money supply, which we know too is partly fueled by the ways and means of the central bank. But the bulk of it again has to do with the fiscal authorities, the issue of energy, the issue of transport. These are also some elements of the productive capacities that I talked about. So inflation is key. The other issue too has to do with even our borrowing, particularly the external debt. Kieran and Kingsley, by next month or by July, $500 million euro bond will mature, crystallize, and euro bonds, you repay them in bullets. They're subject to bullet repayment. So the country will have to look for $500 million in the next 2 months, And by 2025, we should also look for another 1 billion, 1.1 billion to also repay another Euro bond. When we were borrowing those Euro bonds some 10 years ago, okay, we never knew that this time would come, a time to repay the Euro bonds. So what I'm saying is, my advice is, going forward, the next government should avoid as much as possible commercial external loans, because they are expensive, okay, and because they also drain our foreign reserves. $500 million is not small money. $1 billion is not small money. The other day, I was listening to the governor of Cross River State, His Excellency Ayade, and he was saying that he has been looking for just $350 million to develop the Calabar deep sea port. Just $350 million. Okay, so, and here we are, as I said, by next month we should be ready with 500 million. So the point I'm saying is that going forward, we have to focus more, if we must borrow, okay, on domestic debts, and then concessional foreign loans if they are available. And even when we are borrowing domestically, we should use the right instruments. We shouldn't be using more of FGM bonds. We shouldn't be doing more of FGM bonds as we've been doing. We will do more of infrastructure bonds. We do more of sukuk. Okay, if you look at the sukuk size we are carrying in our domestic debt stock, it's just 700 billion. Okay, and it is rather small. When you do infrastructure bonds, you tie them to particular projects, and that is the way to go. So we also have the issue of we talked about it too. You can have inflow of funds coming into Nigeria, okay, when it takes half the time and half the cost, okay, for a container to move from China to Apapa than for it to move from Apapa to Ojota, for example. Okay, so how do you address that? And a situation in which 80% of the vessels that bring goods to Nigeria, they leave Nigeria empty. Okay, because we don't produce. So quickly, how do you produce that? We need to develop the seaports in the eastern flank, the Calabar, the Akwa Ibom. Okay, if we do that, okay, then this central bank's ROT 200 billion program would make sense, because one of the major pillars of that ROT 200 is port reforms. Okay, and that's why they're talking about dedicated ports. So develop those ones. We are going to have
Prof, because you're becoming professoral, in your explanation, that I doubt if many Nigerians will follow. What we know is that the government borrow money, whether it's cook, whether it's bond, they borrow money. And when they borrow the money, what did they do with the money? That's what the ordinary Nigerians wants to hear. The technicalities of the borrowing, yes, the technicalities of the borrowing is what you know as a professional. Nigerians don't know that, But if they see a project, completed project based on borrowed money, they will say, yes, the government has arrived. So I will still pose a question to our guest there, Joshua Ango, but to be after the break. All right, we thank you for staying with us on Good Morning Nigeria up till this moment. We have been trying to dissect issues concerning monetary base or interest rates and what have you. Gentlemen, inflation, high interest rate, trade imbalance, all that, is a function of failed economic strategies as a nation. We have had in this country the Okonjo Iweala. We have had in this country Kali de Kakalo. We also had Chuo Kongo. We also had many more economists. Yet the country is still grappling with how to manage the economy, how to become a producing nation, and what have you. I am going to Joshua Ango. And Joshua Ango, you mentioned the visit of the CBN governor to Indonesia. I've also had a visit to Indonesia, courtesy of the Federal Ministry of Science and Technology. And what we went there to do at that time was to negotiate on how Indonesia can collaborate with Nigeria in science, technology, and innovation. We are taking to where they are producing all their guns, all their armaments. We are taking to where they are producing airplanes. We are taking to the factory where they are producing all these planes. And the then Minister of Science and Technology was, in fact, let me use the word shocked to see the extent of level of development of Indonesia in producing things that they need. One of our guests here, Dr. Fasho, made mention of the fact that we are importing science and technology is the largest quantity of what we import into this country. So, where are we? The CBN governor was in Indonesia. Was it to discuss monetary policy or fiscal policy? Or was it to discuss how to re-energize Nigeria in terms of industrialization, in terms of building plants for production? I can assure you that we have engineers who can produce electric transformer. I was with them in China where they were training, about 100 of them. But there's no plant to produce these things. They will give us exactly the kind of electric transformers that we need, that will produce based on our climate. But we're importing from Turkey, we're importing from probably the people we are power with in the 70s. We're importing from them. Even Pakistan are making planes. We're importing from them. And where have you? So, I'm taking this question. I'm giving you this question because of what my colleague raised as to how we can become productive. Because if we are not productive, I'm not very sure that we're going to get this monetary policy or exchange rate right. Because everything boils down to what do you have to offer the world? What do you export? What do you export? So, where do you come in from here?
They have raised a very big and important point. My subscription, if any, for this would be patriotism. What we need, that is just what we need in this country. We have the population. On the average, everybody has accepted that the Nigerian, on the average, is above average when it comes to intellect. So we have what it takes. We have the people, we have the knowledge. What we need is patriotism. And what we also need is commitment to certain national goals. What we need is planning. We need to plan. We need to plan. If we fail to plan, we're likely going to fail. So basically, that's what we need. We need to commit to certain goals, to certain things. And where necessary, we have to probably swallow bitter pills, so as to achieve what we need to achieve. Take the example of, then when you put this side by side with the issue of inflation and all the other developmental issues, those are expected, regardless of we're a developing economy. So things we have to be managing our economy. We have to be seeing challenges in terms of inflation, in terms of unemployment, in terms of this and that. But what we do need in this country right now is to be patriotic, to have certain national goals that we aspire to. One of the issues, for example, that has been highlighted clearly is the number of the volume of imports that we make. I'm very educated, by what Dr. Faswa said about the quantum of technology imports. So basically, then if we have that as a situation reality that we see, then what do we do about it? We have seen before that, for example, we used to import 80% of whatever rice we were consuming. We have been able to reverse that completely in this country. So we can also do the same for other sectors, especially for technology and especially for armaments and things like that. We can do them if we set our minds to it, but then there are certain bitter pills that we have to swallow. Take, for example, the issue of subsidy. We know that subsidy is not sustainable. We know, but we are still going along with it, because we just have to maintain some parameters. But then we have to decide and we have to act right. We have to do the right things. And one of those things is to decide, for example, wherever there is a Nigerian product, however it is, we should, as a government at least, if not the public, we should patronize that Nigerian products. We should encourage them. That is what will help. We have made this prescription many times on this program. Government itself should support. Like, for example, we are talking about automobiles. Now, at least we have some automobiles that are still being produced in this country. So why should official vehicles be other brands other than the ones that we're producing in this country? That's what every other country is doing. They support their own, then at least encourage them, then we can get somewhere. We have to do this. Regardless of wherever in Nigeria something is being done, patronize it. We know it's Nigerian made. We support it, at least officially. Then, of course, when we reach a certain threshold, then government should now encourage them also by putting a bit more higher tariff for for imports of some of these counterparts, so as to encourage the local ones. We are importing furniture from Turkey, from China, from everywhere. We can produce these things. So basically, again, all of those things have impact on the exchange rate again, because that is why we are putting pressure on the exchanges. Then we should punish those who have offended, and we should not see it as anything extraordinary. If somebody has done wrong, people are speculating, they are round tripping. A lot of this exchange rate issue that has happened is not because of any demand or supply. No, it was just a matter of people are moving to safety, people are speculating, people are taking advantage. People will get ATM cards, like for example from maybe 40, 50, 100 ATM cards, and go across the country to another country, withdraw and bring back the money to Nigeria. This has happened. 2010, 2011, I remember in the UK, I spent some time there, and every time I wanted money, I would just go and use my normal Naira ATM card and withdraw. But people have made this impossible because of the of what is happening. So wherever this is seen, there should be serious punishment that should be given. So that is what will give us. So in a nutshell, my submission is that if we want to solve this problem, the solution is patriotism. We have to be patriotic, and whoever has done wrong should be punished, regardless of where or who he is. I think if we get that right and we patronize made in Nigerian products, I believe there will be a lot of solutions, and there will be we'll move forward, God willing.
All right, Professor Risha Awango, thank you very much, as always, for your insight. Just to inform our viewers that there are other aspects of the economy that we'll be considering on Good Morning Nigeria in the days ahead. That will be issues around after May 29th. And those issues will include, for instance, fixing our refineries, to dealing with poverty and unemployment and other sub-issues around the economy. So we might not be able to exhaust all of the issues that our guests have raised since yesterday and of course today, but the other strands of it that are not tangential but indeed integral to fixing our economy with matters that will be taken up in the days ahead. Now, Professor Risha Awango was talking about Nigeria. If you recall, 4 years ago, in the 9th Assembly, which is now outgoing, they have just some weeks to go, the House of Reps said they were going to buy cars for their members, and they called it official cars or cars for work. So there's some label they gave to it. And their preference was Toyota Camry. And we said, why would you spend so much money in going to import cars that are made in Japan? Not one addition in Nigeria.
This is Camry.
I don't know, some minimum that they have.
It's either Prado or SUV.
And in the meantime, you have car manufacturing companies in Nigeria. Manufacturing, Emerson, for instance, is manufacturing because more than 60% of its operations come from getting the raw materials and then putting them together. Nobody bothered about that. They went ahead and imported those vehicles.
And is the electric car now?
Well, 10th Assembly is on the cards. They are having their induction. We hope that the honorable members, when they do get to be sworn in, and the distinguished senators will also get to be sworn in the 10th National Assembly, will take a cue from this. There is indeed an executive order on buying made in Nigeria, or patronizing made in Nigeria. If you don't patronize made in Nigeria, how do you make progress? If you go to the defense headquarters or even just drive around the city in Abuja, you see some of their vehicles are innocent made, IVM. So they patronize all of that. So why is it that we continue to have these outgoings? I want to come back to Shuaibu Idris. Shuaibu Idris, one of the critical issues that, again, we can touch on, I'm sure going forward we'll be in a better position to crunch it, this economic diversification. Just a reminder of part of what Dr. Tokwe Fashua said, technology imports. Maybe we'll keep that in abeyance in the meantime. We import milk. We import fish. We import eggs. So, these are not items that are on the exclusive legislative list. They are not. In terms of agriculture, why is it that we have not, and you've been into agriculture yourself, why are we not seeing state and local governments wave the flag of success to say this is what we have done in boosting egg production? I've not heard any state government talk about that. I've not heard any state government talk about fish production. It said trawlers, fishing trawlers, and so on and so forth. Everybody, what you hear about our fish ponds, this one where they grow catfish and then harvest and now be doing point and kill. That's not what we're talking about. We're also talking about other aspects of economic diversification. If we say our agricultural producers' seeds are going out of our borders, what is it that state governments, ministries of agriculture are doing to encourage cooperatives and then value addition to the local produce of these local farmers? How do we get this right? Very quickly.
Quickly, number one, I think, Kirian, the point you made regarding economic policies being total failure, I would want us to water down that to say it's been challenged. Economic policies are made for individuals, and individuals are difficult to manage and to control. So we need to give some of the previous, people in government the benefit of doubt. You did allude since yesterday to the fact that why are we not looking at STI, science, technology and innovation? I happened to pass through the National Institute for Policy and Strategic Studies, and the theme of my program during 2017 that I attended the course, which was given by Mr. President, was the interrogation of science, technology and innovation for the improvement of agriculture and agricultural produce or manufacturing. And we went around Nigeria, most of the states we went. The point, Kingsley, you've made is why is the subnational not keen? Then you ask yourself, how much has the national keyed into the document that was produced by a government institution that you spend money, give them money to do the studies. We went to Indonesia. What I have seen in Indonesia, believe you me sincerely, Kirian, you probably will not have seen the much we saw, because we spent about 2-3 weeks in Indonesia going around at the expense of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and we came back to write a report. Now the issue, as espoused by my dear brother and friend Professor Usho Wango, is simply put patriotism. And indeed, the elite consensus that we should demand and we should, espouse and be able to have. Unless otherwise we have that, we may not have a way forward. And finally, the challenge, believe you me sincerely, is leadership. No insult intended, but quite a number of local government chairmen, quite a number of state governments do not deserve to be our leaders at that position.
Thank you at that point, Shwabi. Thank you indeed at that. But I wish we had time for more conversations. As a matter of fact, Dr. Fashua, you will not have the privilege of giving us your photo, because of course we are running out of time. But of course you are a regular contributor here, and of course you were here yesterday as well. I'm back again today. So on that note, we'd like to thank all of you for being here this morning. Shwabi Idris, Managing Director, Timeline Consult Limited. It's been wonderful having you. You passed for a journalist. We're going to discuss that further. Professor Uche Waleke, Professor of Finance and Capital Market, Nassau State University, and former Commissioner of Finance in Imo State. Thank you, Prof, for sharing your time and your thoughts this morning on Good Morning Nigeria. Dr. Tobe Fashua, founder, CEO, Global Analytics Consulting Limited. Thank you also for being here.
Thank you very much.
Professor Yusua Ango, Professor of Finance and Entrepreneurship, Kaduna State University. We appreciate your contribution this morning. Thank you indeed for waking up with us on Good Morning Nigeria. All right, next, sports.
CF also won 3 and 2 were draws.
That's it for us on Good Morning Nigeria today. We do appreciate your being with us, and tomorrow is another day, same time, 7 o'clock in the morning. Look after yourselves. I'm Kingsley Osadolo.
And I'm Kirian Omayo. I'll see you again tomorrow.